Am I the asshole for refusing to let a female student use the bathroom? I know the title makes me look like a major asshole, but hear me out. I, male 46, work at a high school as a PE teacher. Recently, I noticed that a student of mine, let's call her A, stopped participating in class, and her excuse would always be the same. She'd say, "Mr. Smith, I'm on my period. Can I please use the bathroom?" This carried on every PE lesson for 1 month when our unit was dancing and I had to give each student a mark. She would leave for 45 minutes and was behind everyone. I had nothing to grade her on and was getting increasingly annoyed. So this time when she asked, I just snapped. I said, "If you're on your period this often, multiple times in 2 months, I think you need medical help."
What would you do if someone said this to you? Once there was a girl in Korea who got in an elevator in the apartment building that she was living in when a stranger came in and told her something that was absolutely terrifying. This stranger came into the elevator with her and tried to make some small talk. He looked at the elevator buttons and said, "Oh, I see that you live on the 14th floor. I live on the 13th floor." She gave him a friendly response and even tried to flirt a little bit. She thought that he was attractive and wondered if they would get to know each other better. But things quickly took a horrifying turn. When the elevator arrived at the 13th floor, the man got off and said, "See you soon." But as the doors closed, he pulled out a knife from his jacket and with a terrifying smile said, "Upstairs." Then he ran towards the stairs. By this time, it was too late. The elevator doors were already closed. She tried to push as many buttons as possible, but it was of no use. She was stuck inside the elevator, unable to do anything, as the elevator made its way up to the 14th floor.
When I was 17, my family actually forgot about my birthday, so when I told my best friend, she felt really bad for me and convinced her family to do something with me. So they took me out to eat at a restaurant where they throw like bread rolls at you, and they told the waitress that it was my birthday. So the waitress asked me to stand up, and I was like, no. But everyone kept staring at me, and my best friend was like, just stand up. So I stood up, and the waitress announced to everyone in the room that it was my birthday, and she asked everyone to sing happy birthday with her, but absolutely nobody sang, so it was quiet. So I slowly sit back down on my chair and I look over to my friend and she's just laughing because this is hilarious to her. And then I look over at the waitress and she looks scared and she starts giving me a bunch of extra bread rolls and she's like, "I am so sorry." Needless to say, it was very awkward and a birthday that I will never forget.
It's what she finds in the kitchen that's really scary. In the early 90s, a young girl was sleeping in her mom's bed when she suddenly woke up for no reason. She looked at her door and she saw her very affectionate cat kind of meowing down the hall as if someone was coming up to pet it, but she was next to her mom and they were the only ones in the house. The girl shakes her mom awake and points to the cat just as a man is walking past the door and disappears into the room across the hall. Before the man could come back out and find them, they both jump out the window, run across the street, and call the police. When the police arrive, the guy is nowhere to be found, but they do discover that the front door was unlocked, so that had to be the way he got in and out. But the mother swears up and down that she locked that door before she went to bed. A week later, the mother's cleaning their kitchen and she opens up the water heater closet where she finds this notebook that inside is their names and pictures of them in it, along with a pair of surgical gloves. Which means someone had snuck in at some point, was living in that closet spying on them, and then walking around their house at night.
If you guys want to talk about the worst mom in the history of moms, let's talk about the case of Diane Downs, who literally attempted to murder all 3 of her children in order to get a man to fall in love with her. So what exactly creates a monster like this? Well, Diane was born August 7th of 1955 in Phoenix, Arizona. Most of her life, she was pretty well behaved, but she started to rebel against her parents around high school. She cut her hair, had a really edgy phase, and got super boy crazy. And she started to date guys, which was way outside of her strict family's rules. And she fell in love with a boy named Steve Downs. They were high school sweethearts, but the second that college hit, they ended up going separate ways. He joined the Navy, and she went to Pacific Coast Baptist Bible College. And while they said that they would stay faithful to each other, she immediately started to hook up with other guys when she got there, and was expelled for her promiscuous behavior, and had to go back and live with her strict parents. While Steve came back, he forgave her, and they ended up running away together and getting married on November 13th of 1973. They were known to fight constantly, but in 1974, they had their first child together.
Is it okay that my boyfriend is trying to convince me to let him hook up with my cousin? That's when my cousin tells me, you should just let us do it. I looked over at her and I said, are you crazy? And she said, if you guys already have an open relationship, what's the difference? I told her I wasn't going to be comfortable with her and my boyfriend doing it, and that she needed to get that idea out of her head. And she started trying to do reverse psychology on me. She said if I didn't let them do it, that he was going to eventually resent me, and that he would see me as the bad guy, and that he'd probably start looking for other girls. I could not believe that my own cousin was trying to do that to me. I started to cry and I asked her if she loved me at all. She then hugged me and says, of course I love you. This is the best thing for your relationship. Part of me started to actually believe what she was saying. I thought maybe he will resent me if I don't let them do it. After that, I didn't talk to my cousin for a few days. During that time, all my boyfriend did was ask me if he could see her again. I made the mistake of telling him that my cousin was down, and then he started pushing even more. He promised me he would only do it with her once, and that nothing would change between him and I. Here's the other thing. There's a guy who's always asked me out on dates, but I always say no. He contacted me and told me that he was finally single and that he really wants to see me. I told my boyfriend that if he was going to do it with my cousin, then I could do it with this guy. That's when my boyfriend said no because I had feelings for this guy. He's arguing that he has no feelings for my cousin, and that if I do it with this other guy, it would be like cheating because I do have feelings for him, which is true. I don't know what to do, and I am so confused. I could just go behind my boyfriend's back, but part of me feels guilty. What should I do?
Storytime about how my boyfriend gave me sleeping pills before his boys' night out. I had been dating my boyfriend for a year and we always had a pretty trusting relationship. One weekend, he was going to have a boys' night out with his friends and I was going to stay home. However, earlier in the day, we had gone into an argument about how he never checks his phone while he's out or replies to my text to check in. He said he shouldn't have to check in with me while he's out, and I disagreed because I just want to make sure that he's okay. Fast forward to later that night when he's getting ready, I told him that even though we're fighting, I still expect him to keep in touch with me. He agrees this time without putting up a fight and asks me if I want to have a drink with him before he goes. He makes us some cocktails and we drink them together while we wait for his friends to come pick him up. When his friends get there, he kisses me goodbye and leaves. Not even half an hour later, I'm knocked out cold. I remember waking up once just for a second to use the bathroom, but then knocking out again. In the morning when I woke up, he was asleep next to me and I was really confused as to why I slept so much when I wasn't even tired. When my boyfriend woke up, he mentioned how nice it was that I hadn't messaged him and how I must have slept through the night after those cocktails. This raised some red flags and I quickly questioned him about what was in the cocktails. At first, he called me crazy and told me that he didn't do anything to them. However, after about 20 minutes of Part 2, my boyfriend gave me sleeping pills before his boys' night out. After I accused my boyfriend of messing with the cocktails, he admitted to putting a couple Benadryl in my drink. This, mixed with the alcohol, is what made me extremely sleepy and caused me to knock out for the whole night. I was furious when he said it. He clearly didn't see a problem with it and even made a joke about how he should do it more often when he doesn't want me pestering him. I freaked out at him and told him that what he did was not only wrong, but could also be a crime. I think this scared him a bit because he quickly started apologizing and promising to never do it again. Obviously, I'm not stupid and I wasn't going to stay with someone who would do that to me. I quickly called my family who came rushing over. I packed my things and my brothers kept my now ex in the other room and threatening him not to come around me. I got all my things together with my mom and my sister and left him that very day. He wouldn't stop blowing up my phone with apologies and sending sorry gifts to my work. I had to block his number and threaten him with a restraining order if he ever tried to talk to me again. I was horrified that someone would go to those lengths and I couldn't trust him after this. He even tried to get his family to text me to get back together with him, but when I told them why we broke up, they were shocked too. They apologized profusely on his
If anyone's wanting to know how to get revenge on someone who spread rumors about you, listen to this story and it may come in handy. So I had a friend that we can call Miranda who was obsessed with me. I was genuinely friends with her, but she would never give me a break. I could not get a breather from her at any point in time. Everywhere I went, she went. And Miss Girl would actually get so upset with me anytime I would go over to another friend's house. I knew she was really insecure and just trying to get attention, so I tried to be patient with her. However, one day I just could not take it anymore. I got into a massive fight with her over how overprotective she is. I literally said, "You are a stage 5 clinger." And in response, this girl ended up joining my basketball and softball team, which I've been on for forever. She told her mom that I was bullying her, which was a complete lie, but then her mom went to the coaches. She got me kicked off the team and then continued to spread rumors about me. I ended up losing my best friends and even my boyfriend over the rumors that she spread about me. So that's when I decided to get revenge. So I decided that I was going to send her over an apology gift with makeup in it, which was a mix of drugstore items and poison ivy.
So I woke up in the middle of the night from this noise coming from downstairs. It sounded like something was scratching the back door. But when I got downstairs, the noise had stopped. But when I looked at the window facing the woods, there were footprints in the snow. But my aunt and uncle were really strict, and they had this rule that we weren't allowed to go in their room when they were sleeping. So I made sure all the doors were locked, and I decided I would tell them in the morning. The next morning we woke up and it was a really intense blizzard. Such heavy snowfall that we couldn't see the ground. So when I told my aunt and uncle about the footprints, they didn't believe me and told me it was probably a nightmare. The next day I had to leave, and I didn't go back and visit my cousins for a long time. But the next summer, my cousins really wanted me to come for their birthday party. Before visiting them, I looked up whether they had ever found the woman who had escaped from the hospital. And Google said that authorities were still looking for her and it was a high priority case. When I got to their house, I was playing with my cousins. They were about to turn 6 years old, and one of them goes, "Let's go check if she's there." And my cousin runs to the window facing the woods. So I asked my other cousin who she was talking about, and she goes, "Oh, don't worry, that's just her imaginary friend." But I knew. When I was in 6th grade, I went to go visit my little cousins at their house. Their house was right on the edge of these woods, and the woods were really thick, and our parents always told us not to go there. And one time I asked my mom why, and she said because when people do bad things, they sometimes go and hide in the woods. I was staying at my cousin's house for a week on this one trip, and whenever I was bored, I would go look out the window and watch the woods. Usually it was pretty boring, and I would just be staring at trees, but one day it was like 5 p.m. and the sun was setting, so it was getting dark, and I saw something moving in the woods. I told my uncle, and he said it was probably just an animal. And I told him no, it was tall and looked like a skinny lady. And he said I have a creative imagination and it was probably just a deer. But then a few minutes later, I heard my aunt and uncle whispering in the kitchen. My aunt was talking about a woman from the psychiatric hospital in their town who had escaped. Their house was like 15 minutes away from a maximum security psychiatric hospital for criminals with mental illness. And then they saw me listening to them in the doorway and they stopped talking completely. A few days later, in the middle of the night,
Storytime about how a stranger wandered into my house and it led to something amazing. I woke up one night to someone ringing my doorbell over and over vigorously. I looked at the clock and I saw it was 3 in the morning. I went to the door and looked out of the peephole and saw a young woman outside on my porch. I opened the door and could immediately tell that she was intoxicated. She started explaining to me that she was at a bar down the street and lost her phone. That's when she asked if she could use mine and call someone for a ride home. It was freezing outside, so I reluctantly let her in. She asked me for water, so I led her to the kitchen. She proceeded to open my fridge and start eating my lunch meat and various other snacks. She then kicked off her heels and sat down at the table with a jar of pickles and started talking to me like she's known me for years. She told me her name was Krista and asked me how work was and what I was up to tomorrow. I reminded her that she needs to call someone to come pick her up and handed her my cell phone. She took the phone and FaceTimed her brother. She told him that she needs a ride but she has no idea where she's at and handed me the phone to talk to him. I told him the situation and gave him my address to come pick her up ASAP. A few seconds later, my doorbell began ringing again and someone started banging on my door. I went to the door and opened it to find a guy outside and he looked furious. This is when things got intense. Part 2 of how a stranger wandered into my house and it led to something amazing. I opened the door and quickly found out that this guy was Chris's boyfriend and it became clear that they were in some sort of fight. Chris started telling him to leave and accused him of following her and kept screaming at him that it's over between them. The guy turned his attention to me and asked what guy Krista was here to sleep with and began accusing her of coming here to cheat. He started yelling at me for helping her. All of a sudden, he grabbed Krista by her hair and started dragging her out of the house. I quickly ran after them and started screaming at the top of my lungs for him to let her go. Luckily, one of my neighbors heard the commotion and came to our aid. The guy let Krista go, but now he was trying to fist fight my neighbor. A few seconds later, a truck pulled up to my house and a man jumped out, which turned out to be Krista's brother. I quickly explained the situation and helped Krista into his truck. Krista's brother proceeded to confront her boyfriend, who was still making a scene, knocked him out clean with one hit, and drove off, leaving her boyfriend knocked out cold on my front lawn. Her brother texted me the next day thanking me and apologizing for knocking that guy out in my yard. We started texting back and forth and getting along, and I actually asked him out a couple days later. We've been dating for a few months now thanks to his drunk sister stumbling onto my porch. I guess everything happens for a reason.
Story time about the girl who left me unconscious in the girls' bathroom. So a little background information. I was pretty young at the time. I was in 7th grade and I was 11 years old. And there was this girl who we're gonna call Jenna. Jenna hated me for absolutely no fucking reason. She would bully me because I had red hair, and she would text me literally every day at the same time, telling me to off myself, and how I was weird and how nobody liked me. One day she randomly started being nice to me. She sat with me at lunch and her water bottle was empty, and she asked if I needed mine filled up too. Stupidly, I said yes. Well, she ended up putting drugs in my water bottle. After like 20 minutes, I started feeling sick, so I went to the bathroom, and I was kneeling over the toilet when everything went black. Well, when I didn't come back from the bathroom, my teacher got worried, so she sent security looking for me. They were banging on my stall. Obviously, I was fucking unconscious, so I didn't answer. So then they called the fire department, the police, the ambulance were all there. Like for part 2. Part 2 about the girl who left me unconscious in the girls' bathroom. So like I said, the fire department was there, the police, the ambulance. They called the fire department because they couldn't get the door off. And when they removed it, it fell on me. So I was injured and unconscious. And just a little background information on this girl, who mind you was literally 11 years old. She had a 3 criminal record and was recently in prison for 5 days. Or juvie, whatever the heck you want to call it.
because she brought a knife to school and tried to stab some kid who had called her fat the day before. Anyways, back to the story. I wake up 4 days later. My mom's sitting next to me. They put Abby in jail for 13 years for suspicion of attempted murder, and she was kicked out of school. And now I'm homeschooled and failing all my classes. I now have seizures because of the drugs that she gave me. So yeah,